Have you played Songs for a Hero?
I'll introduce myself, I'm the hero of this song. I have to save the princess and I just can't take too long. But in order to do this, there's something I need to improve. This quest will not be overcome if I don't start to move.
This is an interactive musical in a generic fantasy setting. I don't like it. Like, the singer's not the best, but he's putting his heart into it. I can respect that. Sure, the rhymes are corny, but it's much easier to rhyme in Portuguese, this game's original language, than it is to rhyme in English. Also, it's not a sin to be corny. Even with that, I still loathe this game. 2 reasons. It's tropey, and it's lampshade. You could go to a certain website, if you like, I don't, and see works you appreciate atomized down to storytelling tools the authors have supposedly inherited from others. All writing has tropes, but some are just tropes. A tropish work matches the lowest common denominator of cultural dregs and says, yep, that's me. Think of like isekais, hopefully without the slavery, and their generic, unspecified fantasy worlds. It's sad to me. It's sad that a work has consigned itself to be unremarkable, that treats its setting as a mere pretense for the hook of the story. But like, people make art out of derivative cultural trash all the time. That's what camp is. At best, we could pretend that a work can be so tropey that it enters a kind of like monomythical timelessness, sort of like a hero's journey. The problem is that the hero's journey is wrong. It's bad anthropology. It sucks. Doesn't make good art. Mostly makes bad screenplays. But there's something worse than tropiness. To lampshade is, after engaging in something that's tropey, acknowledge it through the text, that it's tropey. No. I know I was being stupid or lazy or derivative or boring. I was in fact being stupid or derivative or lazy or boring on purpose. This is supposed to assure the reader. I can understand the desire to bring in the reader as like a co-conspirator. Like, look at us, we're wizards in the marketplace of ideas. Ultimately, lampshading is cowardice. It's irony poison. It's a self-consciousness that precludes radical honesty about a work's conditions. Next question. Have you played I Love You, Colonel Sanders? This 2019 officially licensed joke VN best represents the IOELVN. Visual novel, VN, OEL as original English language, and I as in ironic. Think of it like an April Fool's Day VN, sorta. There's a tag for April Fools on VNDB, the DB for VNs. That list has games going back to the late aughts of VN makers and appreciators skewering their own genre. I don't mean that when I say IOELVN. I mean like Valorant, or Dead by Daylight, or fucking Pal World. Outside of April Fools, think of Date Everything, where you date household objects. A thing that you can already do in real life if you're not a coward. This is a serious genre, with a lot of serious, good art, with a literary canon, with a history of deconstruction and reconstruction, and there's plenty of space to joke about it when you know what it even is. But for one obvious day a year and 364.25 subtle days otherwise, the VN is just a joke. If you make a visual novel, you, as an author, have a responsibility. Writing a book without ever reading a book would be irresponsible. Making a visual novel without having played visual novels is not uncommon, or not seen as weird. This critique extends if one has read a visual novel, say Hatoful Boyfriend, a funny and genuinely heartfelt work that its readers seems to have taken the lesson of be stupid, then get dark from. Or 2 visual novels, Doki Doki Literature Club, a game which is not as bad as I thought it was, but which only attains the position of high art in a reader's mind if that reader has not experienced the canon of visual novels nearly at all. What I'm saying is you have to read widely. It's not wrong to be influenced. Everybody's influenced, even if you read nothing. There's no authentic, uninfluenced creativity. Reading widely is what allows you, as an author, to choose what you are influenced by. By not reading widely, you are dooming yourself as an author to make the same arrogant mistakes others make and writhe in at the pit of a lowest common denominator fiction. Additionally, you are working inside a Japanese genre. If you engage in art practice from outside your culture, it is your bare minimum responsibility to read widely from the roots of that which you want to take for yourself. Class of '09 bills itself as not a dating sim, a rejection sim. Point 1, it isn't either of those things. Point 2, You should play Perfect Tides instead. There are plenty of OELVNs that I like. You got your Coquette Dragoon. You got your Misericord. You got your Soul of Sovereignty. You got your fucking We Know the Devil. You got your fucking Blood of God Lunafairy. You got Scornhorn, which will be out soon. Additionally, the scene of OELVNs does seem really bright, like with a lot of young authors very devoted to the medium who are making their gay little fantasies. I don't love everything I've seen, but it's like these people are genuinely engaging with the prompt. All right, last question. Have you played Deadpool?
I looked over your proposal. Not gonna pretend I understand any of it, but the answer is no. We're gonna pass on your big game idea.
What? He said no? That was our chance to be in our own video game.
Maybe we shouldn't have written the proposal in crayon. Relax. You know he's gonna call back.
Oh yeah, because of the...
In Deadpool, you play as Deadpool. And you find him so funny. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought Deadpool. Even though you can't buy Deadpool anymore, you would have bought it. And Deadpool's making a video game in the video game. And he doesn't like the script of the video game, so he's blowing stuff up. Is that good? Is that intellectually or artistically stimulating? You can address the fourth wall once, and it can be just a little wink. But if you do it continuously, you're in the realm of metafiction. Metafiction is at least 400 years old, but let's take a survey in games for a second, very briefly. You got your Stanley Parable, a game which wisely bills itself as a parable, a simple story meant to teach overt moral lessons. Its simple and ridiculous premise leads to a simple and ridiculous experience. More ambitious projects like Superhot or Umineko no Nakokoro ni thrive on metafiction through sheer scale, either in immersive violence and overstimulation on the one end, or just length and depth on the other one. What I mean is, if you try to vaunt yourself into the realm of Metal Gear Solid 2, or Moon, Remix RPG Adventure, you gotta pack heat. You need some way to anchor yourself in the fact that what you're doing, fiction about fiction, is completely ridiculous, if not outright quixotic. And if you're doing metafiction, it's the year 2024. You can't start from such a stupid place like, you did the bad thing we offered you to do in the video game, and doesn't that say some bad thing about you, the player? Or, here's a narrator who will tell you to do things, but you had to fight the narrator, and now you've determined the value of free will. Or, what if you build a bear, a cosmic horror goddess from desires a game is selected for you, and then date and or kill her, then do it again? Quick aside, 3 different times I've told somebody, oh yeah, I'm playing Slay the Princess, I fucking hate it. They've been like, what? You mean you like it, right? You're doing a bit, right? It's like that one Tumblr post about fanfiction. After my first stream playthrough of it, I immediately got hate mail on Twitter, which was so funny. If you feel over the course of this review that I am attacking you by ruthlessly criticizing a work which you like, I would encourage you to delete whatever comment that you've written and type out instead, I've never met a fiction I didn't like. I promise you that is going to piss me off way more than whatever you've got cooked up. From the refracted light lens of Songs of a Hero, I Love You, Colonel Sanders, and Deadpool, we find Slay the Princess. We know from the title that Slay the Princess is tropey. Each route selects a trope development to add to the princess, alongside a trope companion in the player's head, who then argues with the narrator or the hero about how predictable or stereotypical a certain outcome was, immediately lampshading every plot development. Slay the Princess is a visual novel, and it is original English language, and it is absolutely ironic. Which doesn't mean it also isn't at times sincere. Real art, after all, went into I Love You, Colonel Sanders. Slay the Princess from the conceit demonstrates that it's not quite what it seems. The good ending is fast and unremarkable, after all. As we'll see in a little bit, this game doesn't actually require you to think very hard or at all. It just requires a little bit of ironic distance, a little bit of non-credulousness, and then it's good to go. Ironic and unthinking? Damn, what is this? Fucking 4chan? And Slay the Princess is Deadpool levels of boring metafictional tomfuckery. The player is constantly treated as a player in a game, which is a cool trick if you haven't been paying attention or haven't experienced very much art. Slay the Princess aspires to be metafiction the game, but once you know what metafiction is, you look underneath, there's not very much actually holding up this game beyond its sparkly trick. This game isn't just bad, it is rotting On the inside, bad. Obviously, I understood precisely the cultural position Slay the Princess was going for from first blush. It's called Slay the Princess, and a bit of a watch-through confirmed it. I hate it! I liked hating on it. Why bother playing it? I knew it was a one-star game. Then I played it, for two reasons. One, to interrogate my hatred, and see if it holds up. It's like a worthy exercise of intellectual honesty. And two, for the joy, should I be proven knight, of hating and the fun of finding out why exactly something sucks just as much as it does. I played the game on stream for about 8 hours and then played about 8 or more hours on my own. Playing on my own, I used a spoiler-free flowchart to help guide some of my choices. I had to do so many takes of saying spoiler-free flowchart. Then at the very end, I did look up an achievement guide to help me see a couple of edge case writing that I thought would be important for me to consider. So I played this fucking game, Slay the Princess, and it has a lot of good stuff in it. The prose style is elegantly done and wrought by a careful and thoughtful hand to give each character a unique voice. The art is gorgeous. The voice acting ranges from the phenomenal for the player characters to the very good for the princess. The large-scale narrative design is good to great, as in the tree of available options and the choice nodes are arranged effectively and invitingly. The music is serviceable, if often planned. The Den, the Tower, the Wild, the Thorn, and the Dragon chapters all give me the thrill that only good, thoughtful fiction can give. Ultimately, I get to hang out with the weird freaky lady and shunt our bodies apart with love and fury and watch her get big and strange and scary and hot and passionate and lavishly described with big fun bunch of blood and guts. Shouldn't that be enough? What could possibly make this game 1 star? How could I hate it so much? I don't. I'm fond of it in the same way that I'm fond of Spice World, an objectively bad film. It isn't even a 1-star game for me anymore. It's 1.5 stars, the half star for something very specific that we'll get into later. Here's the issue. This game is philosophically rotten. It has about 3 times as many words as it needs. The voices' internal debates are irritating, circular, and have the gall to call themselves irritating and circular. The art and writing don't actually need each other, which makes them excessive to each other. All the characters are one-dimensional, except for the narrator, who is 1.5-dimensional, the hero, who is 2-dimensional, and the princess, who is 0-dimensional. It has not distinguished itself or taken responsibility as metafiction or as a visual novel, instead taking the lowest common denominator fiction to its most vapid state. It is designed in a manner that disrespects the player's intelligence and encourages dazed, glamorous submission to its preening and arrogant nature. Slay the Princess is a nothing work, which has cheated its way to a Metacritic score 1 point below Disco Elysium, a game this game desperately wishes it could be even half as great as, due to English language audiences' deep contempt for and misunderstanding of visual novels. It's like really bad. It's bad from before the title screen. Between the accessibility announcement and the title screen, there's a short message. Whatever horrors you may find in these dark spaces, have heart and see them through. This is a love story. Why is this here? What does this say about how the game approaches the player? You've already given us a content warning, so this isn't a horror warning. You're asking me to play the video game I already have. I'm sorry, but let's take Dark Souls, a game whose darkness Slay the Princess aspires desperately towards. That game requires no such warning. You get out of the undead asylum, and the first guy you meet is like, congratulations on getting out of the tutorial. Nothing that you do matters. You should stop. DS1 uses friction to invite the player to distrust, to engage, to find strength somewhere, either within themselves or in their other players, and move forward with them. In this screen, Slay the Princess begs the reader for credence. The screen tells you that you do not need a critical consciousness. We will take care of you. Also, do you think you needed to tell me that a story with a hero, a narrator, and a princess is a love story? Do you think I'm not paying attention? Are you expecting me to pay attention? Do you want me to pay attention? Do you think it matters? Do you think I'm stupid? Slay the Princess wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to be a horror game, but it also wants you, the player, to not be afraid, as if that's not why people play horror games. The work itself is afraid to be what it is, else it might lose the reader they desperately want. So this screen is an apology. You shouldn't do this. For the same reason that you shouldn't upload your game to a game jam with the title like Shitty Game Jam Product Number 4. If you do not believe in your own work, I am not going to believe in your work for you. If you need to tell me to play your video game that I already have before I play your video game, something is wrong. Past the title screen, we begin. You're on a path in the woods. Most fiction is in first or third person for a good reason. It's unwieldy, it's difficult. It drags you immediately into metafiction, but most of all, it's presumptive. I, the player, am not your friend. I'm an adult with an open mind and a critical capacity. We're not playing a tabletop game together. In a tabletop game, DMs describe the environment in second person because they are inviting the player's imagination into communion with theirs. Not only is that super intimate, and again, I'm not your friend, but Slay the Princess has art. It has beautiful art. It has sketch-like and gestural art in a way that invites further description, sure, but there's no need for me to exercise my imagination when I look at this art. The game has asked me not to imagine, not to worry, before the title screen even started. The art and the visuals just don't need each other. And while I think this game would be fun as like a choose-your-own-adventure radio play, the art is better. So I just want so much less text, especially from the voices. Once the different selves enter, every possible unsaid subtlety of the text is over-discussed to the point of utter boredom. In my first chapter, I encountered the Contrarian. Aren't you surprised? The Contrarian has nothing to say that isn't about him being a Contrarian. When I make a choice counter to the narrator, the Contrarian enters to capture my feelings and claim to represent them. This is the choice you made, so this is what you are. Like a personality quiz. The Contrarian spends most of his text telling me what I already know, claiming to say what I already feel. The same goes for the cold, and the smitten, and the hunted, and the whole Greek chorus of one-dimensional idiots. Not only does this fail a basic show-don't-tell test, but also it's, like, extremely self-aggrandizing. Why do you need to describe all this stuff in such excessive detail, and then have different characters repartee over whether or not is true in ways that are resultant from the stereotype that you already wrote them to be obvious as? Why are you writing words then? You have to trust the reader. That's like freshman in creative writing level advice. But I'll bite. Let's say that we are multiple people at the same time. I am plural. I know what that's like. Oftentimes plural systems do begin from DSM-type archetypes like the protector, the persecutor, the comforter, and so on. But living while plural means taking these stereotyped starting points and learning how to live with everybody that you are being a three-dimensional full person, not chained down by whatever destiny, traumagenic or not, has been imposed on you. Like, I can't help but think of Subarashiki Hibi, a game that has a similar bait and switch to Slay the Princess, has an explicit discussion of plurality and moving beyond archetypes, has genuinely thoughtful and specific goals that it reaches for, and you can fuck a desk. If we entertain a plural reading of Slay the Princess, I've seen more subtle and careful plural allegories in the Gospel of Mark. More likely than plural stuff, we're going for different facets, a la Disco Elysium. The problem is that none of our voices have anything interesting, funny, or insightful to say about our surroundings, conditions, or circumstances. As Elle in my chat pointed out, all these ideas suck isn't nearly as good as Are Women Bourgeois? Disco Elysium brain elements all have names. They have three-dimensional personalities that reveal themselves over time. But the cold only says what the cold would say, which only describes what the narrator had pointed out in the first place for the cold to say. It's reflexive, it's obvious, it's unnecessary. And when many voices arrive, they argue. They point out every possible read of the story, every possible subtext, now boring, quivering text. There is little chance to exist in this world without having all your feelings prescribed to you. As my friend Ree says, there isn't a world in Slay the Princess. There is a summary of a world. Let's zero in on the narrator's job. Not his character yet, just his function. Back at the start of the game, the 11 initial dialogue choices are marked as explore or not, needing to specify us whether they have ludic impact or not. I selected, of course, turn around and leave, to which the narrator cried, "Seriously?" I get the hook. We act, and the narrator, an inseparable parasite, describes what we do. Through his description and our choices, we co-create reality. That sounds really interesting. Until you consider that that is what literally all video games are. Game design is already a conversation. This explicit conversation overstates itself, and then asks me to say things like, "You're not emotionally blackmailing me into doing this," to a narrator. As I proceed with the narrator, the game begins telling actual fiction. Illuminating lattice of all-in-one fractal infinite expanses of cabins. And then the narrator gets mad at me and the loop breaks. I later learned that the author of this game totally expected me, wanted me to make this first choice. Great job, man. You reverse psychologied me into your trap. So why would I trust you to bandy about the word of connection, the anti-solipsist word, the sacred utterance you, if you want to play stupid tricks on me? One thrill this game could explore through looping is the thrill of bending and breaking down the laws of the universe. Once you've gotten to the final boss, you can, kill God, like a JRPG protagonist. You get to demonstrate your mastery of the rules of the world. But, every game asks you to do that. That's what beating a game is. Baba Is You trusts your intelligence to an obscene degree and forces some truly difficult logic puzzles on you for precious aha moments you've earned that break down the world entirely. It breaks down the world by asking things of you. Slay the Princess asks you to put your brain away, to submit to the over-described redundant world that needs no curiosity in order to reveal itself. And then it hits you with this philosophy shit. This game's philosophical edge comes out a little bit in the narration, but really goes on overdrive after we complete a loop and begin bringing the shifting mound a heart. She shifts on my mound till I heart. She hearts on my mound till I shift. In these conversations with the becoming princess, the game attempts to flex metaphysical, tender, beautiful writing. And it is pretty, sure. When I tell her that I feel bad for killing all of the princesses that I'm bringing to her, she says, "It says that your heart is gentle, that even in the darkness you are guided by compassion." That's nice and flattering, but you haven't said anything. I'm offered to ask her, is this the end of the world? And she responds, how could the world have ended if we are talking? As this edit going around where Squidward asks SpongeBob, do you fear death? And SpongeBob responds, how could I fear it? If I am, death is not. If death is, I am not. And then she fucking tells me, nothing is an idea that dwells in the absence of something, but nothing doesn't exist on its own. And because of that, nothing can't exist. A, extremely stoned thing to say. B, if you're this curious about nothing, you could have actually read The Existentialists, who talk about this a lot, for whom this is a plaything, as my friend once put it. But you didn't! You just wrote some stuff! The final boss is more of the same. It's haunted dark ride metaphysical aspirations told through Prisoner's Dilemma level 101 thought experiments and pseudo-riddles, totaling sophistry, the video game. Maybe that's overstating it a bit, but it's just boring. And it doesn't mean anything. There's a lot of writing one could cast aside as saying boring and doesn't mean anything that has a lot going for it. During these sections, I tried, even if you don't believe me, I tried hard to suspend my disbelief about these sections and just try to appreciate their texture and beauty, the tone poem they present. And there's a point where you're just wanking. The riddle-like answers constantly deflect from having to write something powerful and present. The text wallows happily in ambiguity and contradiction. You're just saying shit. If you're trying to give a voice to endless entities, look at the writing of the board in Control. This game, in the face of that game, which I don't even like, is wretched nothing. Nothing to say, nothing to mean, nothing to convey. Noise masquerading as insight, dancing around a philosophical payoff question of, is change good? Or is change bad? Not that deep, man! It's just not that deep! And that's not even the worst part! At one point in his chapter, the contrarian, once the world starts to collapse, tells me, I didn't think our actions had consequences. First of all, they didn't. But second of all, your actions have consequences is the classic gamer fantasy. Choices matter, Alyssa will remember this type shit. I see it as corporate propaganda that gamers on the whole have seemed to buy into, because your choices matter just as much in a linear RPG as they do here. By playing a game, you necessarily craft a unique experience. You don't have to change a plot event to reflect the power of choice in games diegetically. You can give a player a shotgun. It's gamer brain rot to pretend that branching plot threads actually constitute depth. And it's even worse game rot to design your game around a checklist of achievements. The first achievement I got on the contrarian ending was, when anything is possible, nothing is. A sentence that doesn't mean anything, but whatever. Shortly after that, seconds after that, I get the body, and my second achievement. And I check how many achievements this game has, and the horror dawns on me. 133 achievements on Steam. Additionally, the game contains an in-game gallery with CGs that you've seen, which is normal, and hints for how to get ones you haven't, which make it clear this game wants you, is asking you, is inviting you to play all the endings. Undertale was right. You shouldn't want that. Like in Void Stranger, right? There's this one achievement you get when you take your first major action in the game. It is then taken away from you on subsequent loops. In doing so, Void Stranger runs counter to the Ubisoft AAA game's super achievementification. It tells you, pay attention to what you are doing and why. If you only seek to complete a checklist, you will miss the experience. Slay the Princess is a checklist. Let's finally look at the hero, the narrator, and the princess all together. Talking about the hero, things don't start well with him. At one point, in response to the narrator saying, "This is a simple premise," the hero retorts, "You can't say that! Not when everything here is so wrong!" As if I can't tell by looking that the world's dissolving. After we lock ourselves in a shackle that was obviously going to lock us in a shackle, the hero says, excuse me?" The narrator says, "Yes." The hero says, "Are we stuck here now?" "Oh, he's right behind me, isn't he?" At points, the hero will say shit like, "This is so boring." I know, dog! I'm playing a boring video game, but if you want to pretend it's not boring, you probably shouldn't have a guy in there calling it boring. I do like that over the course of 5 loops, the hero, and only the hero, unfortunately, has character development. He develops a balanced, subtle perspective on his goals and needs, which proceed no matter what the player's choices are. I don't have anything bad to say about that. It's good writing to have our surrogate evolve on his own. But he's only half the game's main headmate duo. And if he's two-dimensional, the narrator is just 1.5. The cool thing about an unreliable narrator is that you discover they are unreliable. In Slay the Princess, we're immediately told that our narrator is unreliable. As always, the game hands-holds its way through the metatext, giving the impression of discovery to the player without ever challenging them to think. Every thought that I could have about this narrator, like how cagey he is, and then chose not to be cagey, those distinctions are not left in my mind to grow and become something greater, blossom into an idea. The multiple us voices point out nearly every logical inconsistency and problem in what the narrator is saying to excessive degrees. So we don't have to think. We can't trust this guy. What now? When the game finally gets a little specific with the narrator, where we get to meet and talk with him, we learn that he's a guy. The people he know died. He got mad. He made 2 deities, the Long Quiet and the Shifting Mound. The Long Quiet is eternity, and the Shifting Mound is change. He sends us, in our construct he created, to go defeat the princess, who is the sort of avatar of a deity of change. His goal for us is to create a world where nothing ever changes, where everything is the same. No conflict, no death, no loss. I'm glad this game gave him something specific that he wanted, but I Want a Perfect World Where Nothing Will Ever Change is just about the most derivative villain backstory thing they want that you could describe. Like, okay, Zamasu. Okay, Sphene. Okay, Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club? Did you just read Doki Doki Literature Club and think, oh, I want to do that? Is that what happens? And as soon as you kill him, you get an achievement saying, "Death of the author." Great, thanks for telling me you, the author, went to college. At the end of the day, though, the narrator at least has a dimension to him. There is no princess before we greet her. Before she sees us, based on whether or not we've taken the knife, a decision she could not have known, she responds either in suspicion or rapture. She reacts to our choices. Through our choices, she comes to exist. Once we start looping, we realize we have to bring a few different princesses to the mound to bring her up in a different way. And at some point, it clicked for me. This game is a raising sim. It's Princess Maker. Literally. That's smart. That's cool. That's funny and interesting and fascinating as a choice. And that is, for me, what gave this game 1.5 stars. It's also a big problem. This is a raising sim, but it's also a dating sim, right? This is a love story, after all. We raise a princess to date. We make an ideal GF for us, whether it's a catgirl witch, or a Dami goddess, or an Oni brawler, or a Dami goddess, or a helpless damsel, or a weird ghost, or a Dami goddess. What was I saying? We've pick-crewed ourselves with the dusting of cosmic horror into our fantasy girl. We raise who we've dated, and we date who we raised. There's a much stronger word that I could use to describe that arrangement, but like combined with the antiquated trope of the hero and the princess, what you get is just misogyny. A woman with no interiority except what you put in her. 0 dimensions. I do not know how one could play the multiple different endings of The Thorn and not feel like, in your heart, a liar, a fraud, an opportunist, cynical bastard. But you might say, Alyssa, the game already acknowledges these critiques. That's basically what the narrator is there for. But it truly doesn't. If it did, it wouldn't have over 120 achievements and a completion gallery. And if it did, this is the smoking gun, it wouldn't have had to call it a love story. But you could also say, Alyssa, that's what dating sims are. In the words of Tim Rogers, Tokimeki Memorial objectifies love. And to that I'd say, yeah, but Shiori Fujisaki, the greatest final boss in all of video games, is challenging, is specific, is relentless, is textured, is brutal. The princess is nothing. She's just a woman, and we're just a man, and she's whatever we make her out to be. Alyssa, you're being pretentious. And first of all, yes. Second of all, nowhere near as pretentious as this video game. But Alyssa, what about the pristine damsel ending? With the big house, with the game that never ends, with the food that isn't good anymore? This demonstrates an awareness of the issues of the conceit, the repetition of it, so much so that the narrator can't even stand it. And then it's so tempting to make a work that critiques itself. A work that has all the answers, that presages any defense somebody might come at you with it. Like Twitter, but in your heart. That's what Slay the Princess tries to do with its endless barrage of self-referential text. In a gilded cage of self-consciousness, you've already said every line of attack. How could any critique land? But it's not just boring, it's cowardly. That's the fear to actually say anything. That's irony, and irony is living death. Being aware doesn't do anything. Being self-conscious doesn't do anything. Being metafictional doesn't get you anywhere in and of itself, especially not in a skeleton of tropes. Umineko no Nakokoro ni isn't about metafiction, it's about love. Moon Remix RPG Adventure isn't about metafiction. It's about not playing video games. And Void Stranger isn't about metafiction. It's about having really, really big boobs. So recently I played through In Stars and Time, another game that's just pretty bad. Better than this one, still pretty bad. At the end of it, I was like, look, a lot of the people who like this game are young, and this work is good because it is important to them, not because it is necessarily good. There is a distinction. Plenty of things that are bad are important to me. Like my ex-wife. God, I miss her. I think there is space to be angry at people for not purposefully broadening their own horizons. But I was like, okay, what would I tell somebody to play instead of In Stars and Time to broaden their understanding? Something near timeless, something beautiful, something powerful. And I, of course, recommended the perfect, stunning, monumental Void Stranger. The first third of which does literally everything that In Stars and Time does. Near colorless pixel world, genre study, time loop, psychological horror elements, explorations of depression and self-harm, sweet stuff, gay stuff, mechanical and story-based mysteries, striking musical set pieces. All that but better. When it comes to Slay the Princess, what's the alternative? What's the stunning, striking, scary, visceral, philosophical, metafictional love story that does everything this game does, but better? Why, of course, it's Elsinore! Elsinore is a time loop metafictional adventure game. Yes, it's metafiction that interrogates the nature of stories, but it does so grounded specifically through Hamlet without needing archetypical monomythic tropey generality. It gives itself and allows itself grain and texture. Yes, the game constitutes a complex, intricate net of flags wherein your choices matter, but the greatly reduced number of possible branches means that the game can tie and weave them together in a way that's so much more clever and tight. And above all, the metafiction and choiciness isn't the point. It's a love story. It's a fascinating puzzle box soaring on the sea of fragments. It's a sad story about being a young woman. All of the endings are gorgeous, and the game desperately asks you to pick just one of them and move on and never play the game again. But if you return, it will castigate you, and then show you horrors beyond what you've ever seen. Play Elsinore. Challenge yourself to get one ending, stop, and not look any others. I was not strong enough to do that. Maybe you will be. That's all I got. This is pretty rambly, because that's what I promised. I want to thank everybody in chat who helped me refine my thoughts while streaming, including Tom, who said, also really says something that this game didn't have the courage to let you end the world by not continuing. And Garrulus, who says, I know this game is trying to laugh at itself, but the joke isn't funny. And Bclo, who says, this feels insulting to anyone who's ever had a thought. And Nimimu, who said, Doki Doki Literature Club at least tried to be fun. And NFL Slovenia Official, who said, gesturing towards philosophical positions without any actual content or inquiry. and who also said, after I said that I would need to swear up and down in this video that NFL Slovenia official isn't a chat member I just made up, said, I am a real chatter. But were you not at one time a chatter, looking at the screen, capital S, wondering what makes you so different from that which you are watching? And I just want to say, I look forward to your next visual novel. Blow it out of the park, buddy. As an addendum, if you want to stream, it's a good time. We raise money for queer and trans incarcerated people. And lastly, I am contractually obligated to tell you that in the prisoner route, the princess looks really, really, really good in the collar. I'm sorry. She looks really good. I'm sorry.